still watching Nile Cruise. Egypt's new Grand Mufti Shawqi Ibrahim Abd Karim was officially approved recently. The Senior Scholars Authority of Al-Azhar, the Sunni Muslim world's religious authority, met to choose the new Grand Mufti to succeed Ali Gum'a, who was recently retired. Here to talk to us more about the new Mufti and the requirements of the new Mufti and the advice that should be given to the Mufti and vice versa is Dr. Kamal, Bereika, the professor in Al-Azhar University. Hello, Doctor.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Bereika.
Hello.
First of all, let us talk about the choice or appointing of the new Grand Mufti. This is the first Mufti that comes by elections. Before he was appointed by the President. So how does that signify for you as scholars of Al-Azhar? If you could explain to us what's the benefit of that to the Islamic nation?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the world. Peace and blessings be upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and upon the people of his household. First of all, before we talk about the process by which the new Mufti has been chosen, we should talk about the concept of fatwa itself. The definition of the concept of fatwa, because many people actually connect the concepts of fatwa to the death sentence, which is actually given to some people or to some individuals or to a group of people by the court, and this is actually limiting the concept itself. So we have to define the concept of fatwa first. The fatwa is the Islamic legal ruling pronounced by an expert in Islamic law who is professional in this field of knowledge, which is the Islamic law, in order to solve an issue pertaining to an issue that is upon the request of some individuals or upon the request of the court itself to solve this issue. And this Mufti should be trained enough and should be qualified, you know. So it's actually, there should be some kind of standards, and in fact it is a very rigorous standards that's required for the Mufti to attain. Sometimes it requires years and years of training and study, you know. So this is, of course, it is a good occasion to talk about the Mufti, because it is the first time after the revolution of the 25th of January to elect a Mufti from a number of scholars and by a number of scholars in Egypt, and this is actually in itself, you know, it is not. Yeah, it's a great achievement actually. You know, in the past, the Mufti was nominated by the president, you know, and it is an office like any other office. An
appointment.
You know? Yeah, it's an appointment which is actually, if you look to it, you sometimes, so it is related to the presidential institution, and sometimes some of the fatwas are politicized, you know, in the sense that the fatwa is issued sometimes to serve a political purposes.
Yes.
But here the election is actually ensuring some kind of freedom for the Mufti to work and to practice his mission.
Okay, so the second thing that we can be talking about is the requirements of Al-Mufti himself.
Yes.
What are the requirements to be appointed as a new Mufti of Egypt?
It is the requirements that should be fulfilled by the Mufti of Egypt and every Mufti in general. So it is, as I told you, that it is, you know, there is a rigorous standard that should be, which is required for the Mufti. Number one, he should have knowledge of the glorious Quran, and when I say that he should have knowledge of the glorious Quran, I mean the interpretation of the glorious Quran, the occasion of the revelation of every verse in the glorious Quran, the meaning of its verses. You know, he should have knowledge of the general and the absolute, the general and the specific verses. He should have knowledge of the absolute and the qualified verses. He should have knowledge of the abrogated verses and by which verses they were abrogated, you know.
Yes.
So it is a very complicated actually process, you know. The second requirement, he should have knowledge of the entire corpus of the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He should know about the chains of the chain of the transmitters of the hadith. He should know the weak and the strong hadith, the authentic and the hadiths which is false and fabricated. He should have, you know, an idea about all of these, and he should actually deeply study all of these branches of knowledge. Number three, he should have knowledge of the Arabic language. It's a semantic, it's a syntax, it's a grammar. He should have knowledge of the poetry. He should have knowledge of rhetoric. He should have knowledge of everything that is related to the prose and the Arabic language in order to understand the text itself. Number four, and which is very important, he knows how to apply the text itself to an issue. The application,
real
and this
life.
is actually, in the current, if we have a current situation, that this current situation is not clear in the Islamic jurisprudence. So it is the role of the Mufti to apply the text to the new emerging issues.
Yes.
And this is very important actually, and it requires the study of the fiqh. It requires the study of the principles of Islamic jurisprudence, and of course he should have knowledge of all the matters that is related to the issue which is under investigation. He should know everything about, and the fatwas of the previous scholars. And he should also, study if there is an ijma' reached concerning this point before not, So as I told you, it's a very complicated process. It's not an easy. So again, the Mufti also should have, a deep knowledge and the thorough knowledge of the Islamic Aqidah. So in fact, he should be well versed on all branches of the Islamic knowledge in order to be able to make fatwa. And he should be trained by qualified scholars. And this process, as you know, that it requires years and years of study and training.
Yeah, Dr.
So the door is not open for everyone to give fatwa.
Yes.
Dr. Bereika, besides all what you've mentioned, there is also a big challenge waiting ahead the new Mufti of Al-Azhar, which is the rise of the so-called Islamic satellite channels with the dua or the sheikhs who come with no religious background or no study at Al-Azhar whatsoever, or no study of the Sharia or anything, come from nowhere, and they preach to the common people, the uneducated people, very dangerous iftas, very dangerous preaches that would change the stream of society and would inflict a lot of damage. So how is he going to regulate
that? It's actually
that?
affecting the simple people,
Right, how is he going to regulate that? That's very dangerous.
I think it is a very difficult task for the Mufti, because nowadays we have the satellite channels. It is in every home. Everyone is claiming himself to be an expertise in the Islamic knowledge. Everyone is claiming himself to be expertise in the field of the Sharia, and so and many people in these satellite channels are issuing fatwas. We hear hundreds of fatwas on a daily basis.
Yes.
So here, if we are talking about the Mufti is actually there is an institution. He's working in an institutions. I think that he have the mechanism in order to regulate, and I think there should be some kind of rules which should be issued to organize these fatwas of those who are not qualified.
Is it in his, I'm sorry to interfere, but is it in his power to enforce any kind of a law?
I think if there is a law, all of these fatwas will be organized. That we shall not authorize those who are not qualified to talk about the matters of this. And we have to differentiate between wa'az and fatwa. Everyone can be wa'az, everyone can, preachers can give admonition, to talk about something which is inclining the hearts, to talk about something that this is, if you have done such and such an act, you'll go to Jannah, you'll go to Baghdad. But not everyone is eligible or qualified or authorized to give fatwa. So the matter needs a law to be organized and to be regulated, I think. And the Mufti, if we are talking about the Mufti right now, the Mufti before issuing or giving a fatwa, I think he takes his time. He takes his time, he's studying it deeply, and then he can consult and discuss it with the counterpart of the other scholars or with the Academy for Islamic Research or the prominent scholars of his time. You know, he can debate it, and before, but nowadays, what we can see in the TV or in these satellite channels, that the people are sitting down and they are giving immediately and directly, you know.
So, Doctor, we've had maybe a parliament won by a majority of Muslims or Islamists in the past year, and of course the Shura Council, and our first new Islamic president in President Mohammed Morsi. So people started in Egypt and outside of Egypt associating the mistakes of these people with Islam. What's your insight on that? How can we solve that?
This is actually a big mistake, you know.
Yes.
If we are talking about some people who are claiming themselves as Muslims, or those who are attributing themselves to a specific Islamic trend, you know, we shouldn't actually mix between the behavior of the people and the teachings of Islam. And this is actually what has been observed long time ago by Sheikh Muhammad Abdu, you know, that one of the
great men.
No, you know, because this is actually turning the people away from the way of Allah. You know, the people are judging, unfortunately, are judging Islam by the behavior of the people, by the behavior who are claiming themselves to be Sheikh, by the behavior who are claiming themselves to be, affiliated to a specific Muslim groups. You know.
Yes. So this is
right.
the problem.
The new Mufti seems to be, from where I can find here, he has written a book on the political rights of Muslim women. He seems to be an advocate of the rights of women and minorities. So what do you expect with a character like that?
Which is good,
concerning
actually.
the rights of minorities.
I think this is to focus on the rights of the women in Islam. This is it is not something new. You know, it is just we are bringing to light the teachings of Islam,
right.
Which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given, the rights which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to him. So this is actually not something new. But I think, you know, inshallah we are optimistic that the new Mufti, inshallah, will do a great job, and Allah will help him. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help him, inshallah.
And we will help him too,
and we
as
will,
women.
you know, inshallah.
And men also.
Inshallah.
Right,
Inshallah.
Ahmed?
So, Doctor, there seems to be maybe an Islamophobia now in Egypt and the Arab world, as well as, of course, the Americas and the rest of the world. So, before maybe the Arab Spring, the scholars were fighting Islamophobia outside of the Arab world. Now it's in here and it's out there. How can we fight that? How can we change the Islamophobia, the fear from Islam?
If we are talking about the Islamophobia, the West may be excused sometimes for the Islamophobia. If you look to the behavior of the Muslims, it's actually strengthening Islamophobia. If you look to the Muslim societies right now, there are people actually who are frightening the people from the teachings of Islam, as if that the teaching of Islam is a ghost that's going to swallow them or to devour them, you know. So nowadays, you know, if we are talking about on the Western context, you will actually find they have a bitter history of conflict between the Muslims and the West. We have the Crusades, we have the Orientalistic studies, we have the media. So everything is actually you know, supporting the idea of Islamophobia. You know, so nowadays it is the role of the Muslims actually who are living in the West to give a good image of the Muslim, you know, of the true Muslim. The Muslims are not actually respecting their jobs. The Muslims are not respecting their time. The Muslims are not respecting the teachings of their religion. So it is, you know, the expected results is this is actually will support the concept of the Islamophobia, you know.
We're running out of time, but I have one final question because we're already out of time. But will you allow me to also put some blame on Al-Azhar scholars? Will you allow me to put some blame, to lay some blame on the Al-Azhar scholars when they host some very, extreme sheikhs or du'a from Saudi Arabia, like Sheikh Al-Arifi, for example, to lecture there, or other sheikhs like Salafist sheikhs to lecture in Al-Azhar? And do you think that you have done all what in your package to try to defend Islam against those extreme?
I think that Al-Azhar is an ancient academic institution which is open for everyone. Everyone is welcomed in Al-Azhar, and if he has, you know, a very fanatic view, so this is actually can be discussed and debated, you know, so everyone is welcomed, because the one who's actually fears from the other's ideology is the weak people, you know. Al-Azhar, I think that the majority of Al-Azhar scholars are qualified enough. They can deal with everyone, and that the doors of Al-Azhar, from my own point of view, should be open in front of every person. But let me just emphasize one point about the fatwa before we come to the end of this episode, that the fatwa should be contextualized, should be put in a text, in its context, because you know that there are different environments. For the fatwa in Lebanon is completely different from the fatwa in Egypt, from Syria, and so on. So the environment is very important. If we are talking about the fatwa shouldn't be issued in order to serve some political purposes, and that the fatwa first and foremost should be, you know, representing the intended law of the lawgiver. This is should be emphasized in this context.
Dr. Kamal,
and it should be a real fatwa, not a hypothetical fatwa, you know, that is dealing with a real existing issue, not a hypothetical issue. Because this is, if it is based on a hypothetical issue, this is actually will perplex and confuse the people.
Right.
Thank you, Dr. Kamal, the professor in Al-Azhar University. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Now it's time to go out for a quick break, and I'll be right back again with you.